Today we have Sarah Pollard, and she's with us for our flute talk today. So, Sarah, I have a few questions. The first question is, how did you get interested in flute? Why the flute? Why not violin?
Well, I don't know why, but I wanted to play the flute ever since I was a little girl. But my mother, being someone who always does her research, discovered that piano is the best instrument to start on. So I began taking piano lessons at the age of 8, and I later picked up the flute at the age of 14 when we began learning band instruments in elementary school. And I discovered that I loved playing the flute more than anything else. And after joining some local community bands and then a local youth orchestra several years later, I realized that I wanted to pursue a career in music. But being a late beginner on the instrument, I had to work very hard to develop my skills in preparation for university auditions. And so when I was in grade 11, I began studying with a wonderful teacher in Toronto, Peg Albrecht, who whipped me into shape in the next couple of years. And I was thrilled to receive acceptance to the music performance program at the University of Toronto.
Oh, fantastic! Wow, that's a great story. So your mom at first, she wanted you to play piano.
Yes, she supported the flute, but she's someone who is very, always looks into things before doing anything. So when she didn't, my family isn't musical, so she researched, what's the best instrument for a child to start on, and piano came up as the best instrument, and I still support that to this day. I think
Do you still
everyone should
play
start with
piano?
piano. What's that, sorry?
Do you still play piano?
I do. I taught it for many years as a student through school to, well, for enjoyment, but
Oh
also
my
to help fund
goodness!
my
Wow.
education.
Okay.
But I don't really have time for it anymore. But I do enjoy now and then sort of plunking away on it.
Wow. That's awesome and so useful. That's really good that you can do that as well, right? Yeah.
It's so helpful. I'm very visual, so I find when I play the flute, when I play scales or anything, I picture the keyboard in my head.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
I'm not sure how I would do it without having the piano background.
Oh, there you go. So it totally did. Thank you, Mom. Right?
Yes, big time.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so going into the second question, what is your practice routine when you're playing the flute?
So I have a lot of different practice routines. It depends on how much time I have in the day, what I'm preparing for, and how much time I have to prepare for it. But I always begin my practice sessions with tone, starting with the low register and working my way up.
Oh, okay.
I love Philippe Bernot's books on tone development.
Oh, yeah.
They came out a few years ago, and I really, yeah, those are wonderful. And then I move on to technique, which I always vary to keep it interesting. I'm currently revisiting Paul Edmund Davies' 28-day warm-up book, which is a favorite because it's not just linear scales. It's a lot of uh, sort of movement in rapid seconds up and down through different keys.
Fun.
So really, it's, yeah, not always fun. Sometimes it's very frustrating, but
Yeah.
that's why it's a very good technique book.
Okay.
Other favorites are Jeffrey Gilbert's Technical Flexibility for Flutists, and of course Taffanel and Gobert. And then I always warm up on flute before piccolo. And to warm up on piccolo, I usually just play the same tone exercises that I did that day on the flute. But if I have more time, then I like to do the Mazzanti method daily exercises for piccolo, which are awesome. And as a student, I played a lot of etudes, specifically Karg, Ellert, and Anderson. But I find I don't really have time for them anymore, which is why I'm so grateful that I did those as a student. 'Cause these days I usually have to spend about 45 minutes to an hour warming up and then sort of jump right into orchestral stuff for that week.
So you definitely have a structured routine, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm pretty type A in that
Fantastic.
way.
That's really, really good because then when you play, you're probably like, yeah, I really want to play now.
Yeah. Usually I get any feelings I might have of not wanting to play that day. They kind of, I get those out in my technique exercises, and then by the time I get to my repertoire, I'm usually in the mood for it by then. So it's a
Right.
good way to warm
Like
into it.
warming up for a marathon or something. You just got to do your stretches first and then you go.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. That makes sense. Um, so the next question is the best thing you've learned from a mentor.
Yeah, this one was a difficult one to answer because
Hmm.
as we all have, I've learned so many valuable lessons from so many different mentors in my life. But I was very lucky to receive a lot of encouragement and help with my musical education from my mother and my grandfather. And when I was 16,
Oh, that's lovely.
yeah, I was,
Right.
I was very lucky to have that. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think it's for a lot of people, it's sort of not possible without that family support. So I was
Yeah.
very lucky to have that. And when I was
Oh,
16 and I began studying in Toronto, my
mhm.
grandfather was the one who would drive me. He would drive from Lindsay, which is not far from Peterborough, to Toronto in rush hour traffic every week, which was a really long
My
drive.
goodness. Yes.
And we developed a very special bond during that time.
Hmm.
And he always encouraged me to pursue a career that would give me the happiest life. And so he enthusiastically supported my musical passion, which gave me the means to follow my dreams. So,
That's
of course,
lovely.
oh, is that sorry?
That's lovely. That's really nice to hear.
It
Yeah.
was,
Hmm.
yeah,
Did
he
he
was a very
play an
special.
instrument? Was he musical? No.
No, no, he always enjoyed listening to classical music very much. He had all sorts of records. He would always, my grandma always sang in church choirs. She was an amateur singer, and he would always go and listen to their Messiah productions every Christmas and was very avid in that respect. But he didn't know anything about music himself. So he actually, at the time when he was driving me to Toronto, he took a course on music, a self-study course, because he wanted to understand what Peg was saying to me in my lessons more because he found it so interesting. Um,
Aw, I'm gonna
so that
cry.
was
That's nice.
it was very special, and of course, I had many, many wonderful teachers along the way who shaped who I became as a musician, and I was very fortunate to have teachers who were also compassionate and very wise life coaches as well. So I learned so much from them. But I guess to answer your question, the best thing I've ever learned was that lesson from my grandfather, which was to really pursue what would make me most happy in life.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And then the next question is, what is your favorite flute music to play?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of answered some of my favorite technique stuff already. But with regard to repertoire, I'd have to say romantic and early modern, both with regard to solo and orchestral. I'm definitely a sucker for repertoire with lots of different colors and rubato. And I remember the first flute piece that I really fell in love with as a student was Chaminade's Concertino. That's when I really realized I thought, okay, this is my genre of music.
Brilliant. So the concert that's coming up is streamlined to your liking. Like this is kind of what you
Yeah,
want to do.
just by chance, they actually, well, they told me what concerto they wanted me to play, so I just kind of lucked out that it was one that is sort of within the time periods that I love the most.
That's awesome. Yay. Good. Okay. Are there going on to the next questions, number five, are there any techniques you've learned that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I gave this a lot of thought as well, and I decided to talk about how over the years as a student I struggled with a lot of performance anxiety and self-doubt,
Hmm.
especially when I began taking auditions for schools and competitive summer music festivals. And then, of course, later when I began taking professional orchestral auditions. And as a student, I pursued a lot of counseling and therapy for performance anxiety because I
Oh,
really
did
wanted
you?
to figure
Oh, for
out.
goodness sake.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to figure out how to deal with it. I wanted to get good coping mechanisms before
Yeah.
sort of entering the real world. And there were great resources. There's an artist health center in Toronto, which has everything from counseling for artists to massage therapy for artists, and it's all funded by the government. It was really great. And so I did a lot of that. But I think the technique that most stuck with me is actually something I learned as an early teenager with my piano teacher, and it's called EFT tapping, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's an alternative treatment. It's used for physical pain and emotional distress. And it has been used to treat people with anxiety and even people like veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, my anxiety wasn't that extreme with performance, but this technique did help to calm my nerves leading up to important performances and auditions. And essentially what you do is you tap on different meridian points on your face. And you do this while repeating different various mantras to yourself. And it's actually quite a simple process, but it really helps to relieve negative emotions. And I was very skeptical when my piano teacher showed me this, because at the time I thought, well, this kind of sounds a little hokey. I don't know if this will actually do anything. But I thought, when I was in my room by myself, I thought I'd give it a try, and it has done wonders over the years. I find I rarely need to use it anymore, because I think my performance anxiety has it's mostly gone away due to exposure therapy over the years.
Right.
But I think the last time I used it was actually the night before my audition for the ESO. And it's just amazing how much it calms your fears and your doubts and, just any negative feelings you might be feeling going into a performance. So I really recommend looking into it. There's all sorts of articles on Google, but if that's something that anyone's interested in, EFT tapping is
Fantastic. Actually, I've taken a tapping session myself, and I found it very useful.
Oh,
It was broader, it was the whole body. So it was, the face, the wrist, the shoulders, and then going over different mantras. But you have to go through, I think it was 20 questions I was asked, something similar. But,
okay.
yeah, you're right. This tapping thing is a thing.
It is. It is. It can't recommend it highly enough.
Exactly. Okay, moving on. Can you share some performance advice?
Yeah. So actually, this is something recently. So something that the ESO's concertmaster Robert Uchida said to me a few weeks ago before one of our concerts really struck a chord with me. I had some challenging piccolo solos in that concert, and he came up to me with a warm smile before the concert, and he said to me, just be yourself. And I think, that really struck a chord with me, because I think it's such an important motto for anyone to keep in mind while performing, because we are all different and we all interpret and express music in our own unique ways. And music is so subjective that there will always be those who love what we do and those who disagree with it. So instead of trying to please everyone, which is impossible, all we can do in the end is to be true to ourselves when we're performing, and to have confidence in our skills and our own training and in our own ability to make informed decisions and creative interpretations. And we all have a voice that deserves to be heard, and I think that's very important for each of us
Well
to remember.
said. Yeah. And wouldn't you say that playing an instrument is a form of speech? It's a form of expression.
Yes,
So there's no way that we can really compete with each other.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. There are, of course, when it comes to orchestral playing or taking orchestral auditions, as an example, there are many objective things that have to be there in your playing.
Right.
Rhythm, intonation, flexibility to match your colleagues. You know, and especially depending on your role in the orchestra, you're matching different people with your playing. So you have to be a chameleon a lot of the time. So I'm talking more with regard to when you have a solo in the orchestra or a solo performance, flute solo repertoire, something like that. Because there's
Right.
a fine line we have to walk between having to have those objective things there when we're in orchestra and being true to ourselves. I think it's always important to keep that other part of the line, being true to ourselves, in mind, because it can be easy to get get sucked into, all the objective stuff and trying to please everyone and figure out what everyone wants from you all the time.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you for that. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so now we've come to our final question, and it has nothing to do with the flute. Um, so the final question is, tell us something about yourself that not many people know about.
Yeah, so um, I guess my closest friends know this, but I grew up on a 10-acre hobby farm in southern Ontario,
You
and we had an
did?
Arabian horse named Tessie. Um, and as a young girl, I loved spending time with her and riding her around the pasture. And I also loved drawing a lot when I was growing up, and I would always draw horses. And to this day, if I ever sit down to draw just for enjoyment or something, I always draw horses. It's just kind
Fun.
of
I love
something from
horses
my
too.
childhood. Okay. Yeah,
They're
so
my
there's,
favorite animal, actually.
oh, me too, me
Are
too.
they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yay.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
lived on an actual farm.
Yeah, we didn't like live off the farm because it was just a hobby farm, but we had chickens, so we didn't eat our chickens. They all had names. They were all pets, but we ate their eggs. And I would always bring their eggs to my flute teachers in the city because they would love getting
Oh,
these
that's kind.
farm fresh eggs. Um, and we had, yeah, a horse. We had a goat to keep her companion. Because being on 10 acres, we didn't have enough room to have enough pasture for multiple horses. So a kind of a goat's the next best companion for a horse or a donkey. And we had a barn cat and yeah, a forest. It was really, yeah, really wonderful childhood.
Cool. That's so cool. Well, I think that wraps us up for um, the interview. And thank you so much for all of um, your time and all of your wonderful advice. And it was really nice to meet you. And I look forward to your concert. What's the concert again?
Oh, thank you. It's November 28th
The
at
28th. Yeah,
7:30 p.m. Yes.
7:30 at the Winspear, right?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a
Very
pleasure,
welcome.
an honor to be asked, and also a pleasure to meet you again as well.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye bye.